It's the Infinite Podcast. Go tell your friends. It's the Infinite Podcast. My God, it never ends. It's the Infinite Podcast with Rob and Cork the Kid.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Project Infinite Podcast, the podcast covering the infinite and ever-expanding multiverse of fandom from movies, comics, TV shows, video games. We got you covered. I'm Rob. I'm here, as always, with Court. How's it going, man?
It's going good. Feeling motivated. Just watched every Rocky and Creed training montage, so I'm feeling ready to run through a brick wall.
Yeah, it's like an overdose of training montages.
Yeah. Even the Rocky 5 one.
Which, oh man, Rocky 5. I mean, it's
in the
funny.
ring. Tommy Gunn only fights in the ring.
It's funny. Touch me and I'll sue. But yeah, we're gonna.
It's the best Rocky movie, actually.
No, it's not.
I can't wait. We're on our first take debate, and I think Rocky 5 is the best one. But it's only ironically. It's not unironically.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about Creed this week. A little different from what we usually talk about, but got nothing else to talk about, and it's a pretty high-profile movie that came out.
Yeah, it is.
So,
$100 million opening weekend.
Yeah, so figured we both saw it, so we're gonna talk about it like we would talk about any other movie.
Yeah.
Without the pressure of theorizing and...
What do you mean no theorizing? I got some theories after this movie.
And breaking down the Easter eggs, things you might have missed.
There are Easter eggs and things you might have missed. You just weren't watching intently enough.
But before that, we're going to lead the episode like we've done for the past 8 weeks with The Last of Us. So episode 8, the penultimate episode of the first season of The Last of Us. And man, it was maybe the grittiest episode that we've gotten to this point.
The grittiest. It was probably this and one are probably the most raw episodes in terms of, seeing how far humans have come and seeing how far human nature will take you in a time like this. And Bella Ramsey, you got to clear out for that Emmy. In absolutely incredible, enthralling performance. I mean, it's one that takes a lot of gravitas, but also takes a lot of subtlety, which I think is, not to be understated, how much range that they have. It's absolutely incredible. Like, I really can't believe this is the quality that we're getting week in, week out. It continues to put me in awe how much quality we're getting out of the story, out of the production design, and then, I mean, arguably most importantly, out of the actors and the acting. So
yeah, it was incredible. I mean, what we've been saying about the show for the past 7 weeks now is not just stuff being said in a vacuum. I mean, there are very real viewership numbers backing that up.
Oh my God, yeah.
This last episode was charted at 8.1 million viewers, which is more than double the premiere.
What was it? It's like 74% up.
Yeah, I think the premiere was around 4 million and this was at 8 million. So people have been watching and then tuning in to subsequent weeks, and this finale next week is lining up to be one of the biggest finales of all time.
If they're gonna crack 10 million for that finale.
They might. Yeah, they definitely might.
The only good thing is I don't know if this is gonna come into play, but it's also Oscar night, and that's what we'll talk about in 2 weeks if I'm not mistaken. But it's just this is a test of quality. It's a test of quality. It's a test to being true to what you make. And I encourage everybody, you listen to these tougher reviewers, all these things too, but I prefer everybody go listen to The Last of Us listen to the people that actually make the show. I feel like that. What I've started to do is anytime anything comes out, I don't really bother with reviews anymore. I just listen to the people that made this thing talk about it for the most part. That's what I'm really more or less concerned on most projects. So, we're gonna talk about it when we talk about Creed 3, Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut, but it's just insane that I played this game in 2020, had a very visceral experience. You played this game when it came out in 2013, had a visceral experience, and this is what we're getting adapted. It's a dream. It's an absolute dream come true.
And I mean, the best thing about this show, not the best thing, but one of the best things is it's, especially these last 2 episodes, even going, I guess the episode before had a lot, but these last 2 episodes have been infected free, pretty much.
Right.
Or the last 3 episodes, really, besides the encounter that Riley and Ellie had on the mall. But when you talk about the episode with Jackson, the Left Behind episode, and this one, it's been just about the people, which is
Right.
what the show has always been
And
about.
what the story's always been about.
Exactly, yeah.
And I was talking about this too. Do you know why the Infected are in the game? Because it's a video game. That's why they're in the game. Like they're the conduit for the action. They're not the staple of the story. The staple of the story is the humans. And I think what episode 5 did incredibly well, and episode 2 is showing how formidable, like, if they were seeing these encounters every single time, they would be dead. Like, these people, and they would be dead, and that's realistic. They would not be here. There's no close calls. Like, they needed everything in their power to take down 2 clickers. A group of clickers took out an entire town. Like, if there's just a regular basis you're seeing infected you're more than likely gonna die. Like that's hats off to Craig Mazin for making the infected so powerful. And so it's like the idea of horror is the anticipation for the bang. That's what it is. That's why episode 7 kind of leaves you on the edge of your seat really well. And same thing with this one. And it's a different reason, and it's because of David.
Yeah,
and we can talk about that.
Yeah, so Scott Shepherd played David. Just another home run of these kind of one-off performances that we've come accustomed to with this show. And we talked about, Anna Torv with her handful of appearances. We talked Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett, obviously, for episode 3. The 2 actors portraying Henry and Sam, like what they're doing so well is these one-off characters are just hitting so effectively that each episode is its own experience, and this episode was no different. I mean, we see David kind of from inception to oblivion, essentially, like him in the town and kind of the hold that he has over the people there, and you see multiple sides of his personality, and you come to understand, much like with Kathleen and other kind of leadership-esque figures that we've seen in the show, why they have that sway that they have over whatever people they're leading. You know
what it is? It's belief. It's the belief that everything's okay. What I think Jackson does well, and these other 2 factions don't do well, is specifically, it's not selling you on false pretenses. Kathleen sold everybody on not for the most part. She was much more truthful about it, but I feel like it was because she was trying to, she's not usurping her brother's legacies, but she's trying to remix it into her own. And then if you look at David's camp, it's very much they're living a lie. They're all built upon a lie. Jackson's, there's no lie. There's transparency. There's community. Those other 2 factions did not have that. They were built off of hate, where Jackson was built off of love, and look what transpired on all 3 of them.
And then you have the kind of the big unknown kind of faction still, with being Marlene and the Fireflies. Like, I think everyone, that's why episode 1 is so great, because now it's all going to come full circle next week with Fireflies. Like, you're really going to see what that's all about. Like, because you don't really know. You kind of get it in episode 1, and then you kind of get like bits and pieces of kind of what the Fireflies are about, but you don't really know. Yeah. And then next week you're going to see what they're about.
I mean, if you look at Fedra too, Fedra also has that same thing. Fedra has that. This whole story, even from 2013, everything's perspective based. And again, when I talked about, I had some like spiritual awakening, like months after I played part 2, and I was just like, wait a minute, it all is making sense. Like, everything is based off of perspective. So from, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Like, seriously, like from other people's point of view, Joel he's a psychopath. From other people's point of view, David is providing in the most heinous and sick way possible. He's providing for his people in the most sick way possible and inhumane way possible. Kathleen is providing for her people. Like, everything is perspective based.
Well, I mean, that's also the core of the conflict between Kathleen and Henry is perspective. Yep. Henry did what he did, turning over Kathleen's brother to the Fedra for his brother. And from Kathleen's perspective, what Henry did was condemn her brother to death.
Yeah.
Her brother that was,
for all intents and purposes, was like a
good man. Yeah.
A good man, and also, and I think that plays well into this episode, a messianic figure, essentially.
Which is what David is.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, it was even if you kind of know, or you can intuit that there's something off with him, that scene where they're together around the fire, and they're kind of like talking to each other, Ellie and David, and then he starts to like just casually drop in that like bit of information that like, yeah, I sent 4 people out and only 3 came back, and they said that our friend was killed by a crazy man, and the crazy thing is he was traveling with a little girl. And like at that moment, like watching it, like your heart drops, you know, because you're like, oh, this was like a trap, basically. Like they were hunting Joel and Ellie. And you know, this episode, the series of episodes where it's pretty much just Bella Ramsey's show, was really a great showcase for her. Yeah, doing so many different things.
I think it's also important too, and they're going to need this for part 2 for season 2. They're definitely going to need this, and I mean, even without this, I had full out trust, but now it's like, now I'm like eager. Now I really want to see what happens in season 2, and you know how Bella Ramsey handles all these things. It's insane that she's at this at this level. Like this is some of the highest tiered acting you can ask for right now. And
yeah, I mean, she really ran the gambit of emotions this week, from just being that snarky, sarcastic kid that we've grown accustomed to anger, to being kind of ahead of the curve in terms of like quick thinking and being in charge of situations. Like when she first encounters David and James, she really takes charge of the situation, and then you see the genuine fear and panic when she's captured, and the realization hits that they're cannibals. Like that's the big curtain pull moment, like when you put all those pieces together. Like obviously the cannibal trope is a popular one among these zombie stories. You always got to have a cannibal tribe, but this is one of the most nuanced versions of that I think you can get, because they're not all on board with it or knowing of it. You know, David makes the point that like they don't all know what we're doing here, but I'm providing for them. Right. So, you know, and there's a great kind of twist on the whole idea of faith and God, and David claims that he's found God, but then you realize like in his twisted world, like the cordyceps is his God. Like that's for lack
of a better term, that seems extremely accurate.
That's what brought him his personal salvation, was the end of the world, because it let him express the type of person that he always was. And I love how he finds, you know, a commonality with Ellie through violence. He tells her, you have a violent heart, like I can tell. Yeah. And he's right.
Yeah,
he's right.
One of the things I dove into is in the Last of Us podcast, and the ideas were stemming from, you know, theocracy, theocratic empires and theocratic governments, kind of how it's this idea that like, can they be all good? Like, is this belief system, can that run a government? Like, can that be something that you're using? Because it's something where the GOAT himself, Troy Baker, as James in this episode says like, maybe that's just God's will, but it's essentially David believes he's God in this situation, which, I mean, it's kind of a reverse, because, I mean, even down to the shot selection in the final act of this episode is he's the devil. That's, I think, is the comp. Like, that's what he's supposed to represent at the end of this. But, I mean, it's an argument for this. It's like, we saw communism work, essentially, in Jackson. We saw this, like, overthrow of a government and have the people run not work in Kansas City. And because what that does is it sets blinders, and it kind of, people's own personal stakes will get in front of the actual running of the people. And that's what happened to Kathleen in Kansas City. And then we see a theocratic type of, will bending, and what happens is one person believes they're messianic in that faction, and it doesn't work, and it didn't work.
Yeah, that's what happened.
It's funny too. I wonder if Michael would have ran that differently. Like if Michael lived, and I mean, spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2 game, but I think they might have laid some of the greatest groundwork for, like, I thought about this. You know how in the beginning of the season they were doing the end of those openings? I think an incredible opening for season 2, and like the middle of it would be just an opening dedicated to the Seraphites in the second one, and like whatever that figure was, just rising to power, and like right at the beginning of everything, and kind of turning herself into like a god, essentially, to them. Yeah. To the point where like the people of Seattle are like, it's not brainwashing, but they're like, they're not a cult, but it's like their will is bent to this person that's not even alive anymore. That's belief. That's religion. Like she created her own religion essentially.
Yeah, and I mean that's what happens with David is pretty typical of these theocratic societies where the person that's kind of shepherding everybody becomes, they feel that they're God's personal messenger basically, and they, David explains later on that it wasn't really real. It was just his way of channeling his own dark desires, and being able to manipulate people to exercise those desires. Like that's the type of person he always has been. Right.
So what else do we get?
Angry Joel,
the best penicillin in the world, the strongest dose of penicillin that's made from.
Yeah. So we get
what's penicillin? Uh-oh, you've been infected, Joel.
We get a.
Let me guess, penicillin. Let me guess, fungus.
We get the big return for Joel. He kind of steps back into the forefront of the action with one of, the most kind of brutal one-on-one scenes that you're gonna get, where he tortures these two guys from David's group, and it just does it does exactly what the game does, where we hear stories of how Joel used to be before he settled down in Boston, and he was this just ruthless kind of one note kind of madman, for lack of a better word. And you see that come out in him in a protective manifest this time. Like he's so desperate to find Ellie, like, because he's so grown attached to her that he can't lose her again. Right. And he does what he knows how to do, like, and what he does best, and he doesn't care. I thought back to the moment in episode 5 where he comes face to face with that sniper, and he's very kind of hesitant, where he's like, don't make me kill you. Like, I don't want to hurt you or kill you, but don't force my hand. Like, he has that moment. And with this, there's none of that. There's no hesitancy. There's just one thing on his mind, and once he gets what he needs, he kills both those guys without hesitating, without a second thought, without remorse. And I just think that's an excellent kind of, juxtaposition, because every other time he's killed a person up to this point, he's been very hesitant to do so, whether it's that guard in episode 1, obviously the couple that he comes across, he doesn't kill them at all. He just kind of holds them up for some information. But this is a different side of Joel.
Right. Yep. That end scene is just incredible.
It's brutal.
Before we get there, I just want to talk about the cage scene too, because Ellie. What? Tell him Ellie's the one that broke your finger. Like, man, my God. And then that end scene is just incredible. Like, it's every range of emotion that you can feel. There's fear, there's sorrow that she has to navigate this wavelength of emotion all in like 30 seconds, while David is, there's no more ambiguity anymore of what the situation was from the game. He is gonna act on horrible sexual impulses. So essentially David also wants her to be his like little minion wife, because he also sees like that she's got the survivalist mentality. Essentially, he sees like an equal. He sees an equal to him. He sees somebody that doesn't believe, like, she's not a follower at all. Like, she says, what does he say? He says essentially the same thing that the Fedra officer said to her last episode. Like, I see a leader in you. Like, you have all these intangibles. Like, just come lead with me. And she's just not having it, because love is the strongest thing. Any type of love is the strongest thing. And she believes in Joel. She's sold on Joel. It's it. There's no convincing her any other way now. Yeah, and her kind of getting the upper hand on David and doing what she does to him, it's just this release of frustration, of anger, of sadness, everything that's happened to her. Yeah, I felt that too. Every single blow was something traumatic that had happened to her in her life, just taking it out in one moment. Not to mention what was in the process of happening to her, that just, something in her just snapped. Yeah, yep. And
I think it was Neil Druckmann that made the point, like, Joel in that moment isn't saving her physically, he's saving her emotionally.
Right.
In that moment. Like, he shows up and he's just there for her to be safe.
Right, like, because what happens if Joel dies and she goes out on her own? Like, who knows who she turns into after that? Like, she could turn into an absolute, psychopath after that. We don't know what happens after a traumatic experience like that, but that's what Joel is. He's home now. That's what they are to each other. They're home.
Yeah, the walls fully come down in that moment. He calls her baby girl, which he says obviously to Sarah, like, the bond is complete.
Yeah. Oh man, even down to the subtleties of what Bella was like, when she was like banging on his chest, like trying to familiarize his face after that, because you're kind of seeing right in that situation, so you don't know what's happening, and like it's like the calming down. It's just like, man, what incredible performance! Like, absolutely top shelf performances.
Yeah, just another fantastic episode, and just this long line of
fantastic episodes
of the show that just has been incredible from start to finish. And next week's the finale. It's going to be short, 42 minutes.
Yep.
We'll see.
We will see what happens next week.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite a ride.
Yeah, it's been labeled by them like I think Bella said it's gonna be the most divisive episode for good reason.
Yeah. Yeah, there's gonna be a lot of come to Jesus moments, for lack of a better word.
This is the episode. It was this one in episode 5 where the episodes were like the people that didn't play the game. These are the two I really wanted them to see after this. So
yeah, man. Whew. Well, we got some Daredevil news this week.
Oh man.
So I guess this is gonna be like the good news, bad news.
Good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop situation. So the good news, John Bernthal is returning as Frank Castle, as the Punisher in Daredevil Born Again. Don't think that's particularly surprising.
I don't think it's any sort of surprise.
But it's nice that it's official. I mean, He posted the picture of Frank on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I know his podcast page kind of posted like him slow walking through a door with the Punisher music playing. So nothing official from Marvel, obviously, but Hollywood Reporter's on this and everything. So he'll be back. But who won't be back, most notably, are the actor and actress playing Foggy and Karen from the Netflix series. So Deborah Ann Woll and what's the actor's name that plays Foggy Nelson?
Wait,
Eldon something?
Oh yeah.
Eldon. Can't remember his name. The guy from Mighty Ducks. Eldon Henson.
The guy from the second Hunger Games.
Yes, Eldon Henson. So Deborah Ann Woll and Eldon Henson will not be apparently returning for this. Unknown if the Karen and Foggy characters are being recast.
Yeah.
Would be strange.
I think it would be very strange. There's questions that I
These
you can ask. These questions. It's the greatest show ever. I hope everybody knows that. And, I mean, seriously, like, my question is does this have something to do with like him just not being present for anything? Like, is this just a different point of his life? Because and then question B, I guess, is what is the show? Like what is it? Is it like different universe? Like, is this not the same Matt Murdock that we've seen? But then they went out of their way, the showrunners, to say like this is the one from before, but there's going to be changes. Like, what change? Like, why is it different? Why is Gamora?
Well, I told you last night that one of my concerns is the show just gonna be turned into Marvel Netflix All Stars featuring Daredevil? And I do have those concerns that we are sidelining the human characters in light of more heroes. So, like, your Jessica Joneses, your Luke Cages, your Punishers, like, are they all going to be featured in this as a substitute for the more human stuff? And I mean, I think you and I would both agree, like, the human stuff is what made that Daredevil show so compelling.
Absolutely. I mean, I guess we can get into the larger discussion that we had yesterday.
Yeah.
About why these shows and why some of the narratives are struggling. And that's because of your side characters too and other plot lines. Like, if you're so dependent on the main plot line, then if the main plot line is episode 1 or episode 1 and 2 are compelling and sets up a big Easter egg, and then episode 3 and 4 narratively are kind of, all over the place, and tonally, I think usually the middle parts of all the seasons, that's where tonally those shows get a little bit confused also on top of themselves. I think Moon Knight suffers the most from being tonally confused, and then episode 5 and 6 are like, you're kind of playing catch up essentially to a show that if it ran for a little bit longer, or you dedicated more time to fleshing out certain things and not worrying about, the thing after that, you could have dealt with some of these problems. So a lot of that comes through your side characters. What's your B plot? Fine, what's your B plot? But like, what's your B plot? What are your side characters doing, and how do your side characters affect your main character, or vice versa? So how does your main character affect your side characters? I mean, to be honest, the best example of that is probably Miss Marvel. Miss Marvel probably utilizes their side characters the best, up until the point where they're kind of crucial in the last episode, and then brings a little bit of a sense of community, especially in that season.
Yep.
And I think the weakest, like I said, the weakest one is either Moon Knight or probably Hawkeye. His side characters also struggle from this heavily. Moon Knight, who's the villain of Moon? Like, if I were to ask a normal person that's like, the Moon Knight show's cool, Oscar Isaac's in that, like, what's the name of the villain? You couldn't tell me. Or like, what's his ex-wife's name? Probably couldn't tell me her name. You probably couldn't even tell me her superhero name if it was just like a casual fan. Like, that's where I think this is the risk running of these pockets of like events that they just keep throwing instead of like actual shows. And like, we're saying this is like, we said a lot of good stuff about these shows when they were coming out, but I mean, grass is always greener. And now that I'm sitting with some of these things, I mean, the first one that I sat with for a little bit that didn't sit right with me was No Way Home, especially that first half. I will go on here on record and saying that, like, that first, I remember, like, after it came out, and then you rewatch it at home, and you're like, there's nothing. It's some of the craziest scenes. I mean, your childhood's coming back, but like, there's no score. It's just, it feels like it's built for people to react instead of being built to tell a story. And like, that's a very dangerous, like, you got to be real careful here, like, when you do something like that. So that's my fear, that we're kind of substituting great storytelling for events and just things to happen for other things to happen.
And we're coming off talking about a show where the unbelievable strength of it is the side characters in The Last of Us.
Yep.
Like Bill and Frank, Henry and Sam, David, like
Tess.
These are all characters. Sarah. These are all characters that are only showing up for
Tommy. Yeah,
Tommy, more or less. Yeah. There's all these characters that are Riley. There's these characters. I could just keep naming them. Yep. Like, there's these Kathleen even. Like, there's these characters that are just showing up for X amount of time that are just getting incredible development.
Yeah.
Like, in the sense that The Last of Us is giving us full story arcs over the course of one episode.
And all those story arcs affect some way or shape or form, whether it be physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually, the main characters. Like, that's how it should work. That's how you tell. That's how you tell side characters. Like,
and at this point, none of the Marvel shows have really done that.
And and if you count villains as side characters, or obviously the villain is supposed to be the counter, but is that not to the point? Like, that's why, like, poor Ethan Hawke probably got sold a very different show than he walked on to set for. Like, it turned into like a CGI third act fest for him, where he should have been like this kind of, kind of like David, right? Like this cult leader, essentially, like that. And I told you, some of the best parts are the first. It's kind of, now that I'm thinking about it, it's even more concerning. The first episodes are usually pretty good about being compelling and getting people to, start a conversation. Again, Moon Knight probably has that first episode where it's like, this show is actually kind of cool. And again, I just think they all, except for maybe Miss Marvel, get tonally confused at some point. They don't know what they're trying to tell. They don't know. This even leads into a larger conversation about what I think's going on, and I don't think that some of these creators are stepping into here and doing exactly what, they were promised they would get, and that's freedom. I don't think they have as much freedom as we thought they had before.
Yeah, and, this Daredevil thing is a big deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be kind of the shining star of this next iteration of the Disney Plus shows, to be honest. Like, this is the one that everyone is looking forward to.
18 episodes.
18, it's massive.
It's, 18. This is like a season of television. Like, this is like a true prolonged.
It's longer than the Netflix seasons, even.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, it's a lot. And, you know, don't get me wrong. John Bernthal coming back is
amazing,
brilliant. I mean, if you haven't seen him as the Punisher, I mean, it's flawless.
One of the most nuanced performances in the entire MCU.
Yeah, and you know, I just like, are we just gonna get, I said this to you yesterday, like, are we just gonna get like rooftop scene Redux? Like, is that what this is?
Rooftop scene Redux? Is it like a setup for him to be in Armor Wars and get war? Like, what is it? Or is it gonna be him going through the trials and tribulations of him losing his family, how he has to deal with living every day,
and the
morality of the character? Like, that's...
And can you tell that story better than they told it already?
Exactly. In his own show too. So again, you made a really good point. Is this show just the conduit for the Netflix All-Stars? Like, is this just Netflix All-Stars and then you bring in different characters to kind of, you know, complement that as well? But again, and this was my main problem with She-Hulk, is that those side characters mean nothing to anything. Like, even in whatever comedy show you find, some of their side characters get mini arcs or stuff happens to them, or, you know, sad parts happen or whatever, even the funny side characters. But like, She-Hulk doesn't do anything about that for anybody. Like, none of the side characters get anything to do. Like, Abomination probably gets the most to do.
Yeah.
But for like Wong doesn't change any. Like, yeah. Wong's the same at the end of that show. Like, Abomination was already changed by the time we got to the show. Like, none of them go in any sort of arc. Like, that's why, like, I know people are upset about it, but one of my favorite episodes in Daredevil season 3 was the Karen episode, because like, you see what's happened to her to get to this point. And like, you dedicate that time and investment into one of your characters. However you may rate the episode, I appreciate the swing. I do appreciate it. So
yeah, it's just surprising that neither her nor Foggy are returning for the show. And like I said, like, since you've gone through such lengths to get all these actors back, it would be odd to recast those two characters.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I don't know if this is a situation where I do think that Tatiana Maslany is going to be in this show too, because I think by the beginning of the show they're probably going to be dating.
Yeah.
And then you kind of go from there. You see what you want to do. But this show is supposed to come out next year.
Yeah.
Middle of next year, I believe. For 18, I wonder, like we said, I wonder if they're going to do arcs. Like, they're going to do 6 weeks with three episodes. They're going to drop at a time, because, I mean, 18 episodes week in, week out, that's a massive run.
It's a massive run, and they haven't really proven they can do 6 episodes.
Mm-hmm. But then what's the sell? And I mean, I guess we can address the Andor in the room. Like, again, like, levels. There's levels to this. Like, you know, even the Mandalorian too. Like, the Mandalorian full out understands what it is, and you know, even we talked about this last week. Even though the Mandalorian went through some times of, you know, being in season 2, you know, kind of what our fear is, it still didn't betray, you know, Din's story. And I mean, that comes to a head in that Bill Burr episode. And, you know, how strong it was, you know, how potent it was through the whole thing. So, don't get me wrong. I'm freaking excited for this show. It's my favorite character. But at the same time, this is just bringing up the Disney elephant in the room.
Yeah, they have, like I said to you, you know, I don't think they've quite have the same kind of good graces that, as far as expectations, that like they had, because you know, time after time they've come up a little bit short, and especially with these shows. And
I kind of want you to talk about the Sam Wilson thing, because you made an incredible point yesterday about Sam Wilson.
Yeah, and like, my problem with it is he's Captain America, right? And when you compare him to Steve Rogers in the MCU, like, it's the Tyrion Lannister thing, like, who has a better story than Steve Rogers, you know what I mean? And you would think Sam's been around movie-wise almost as long as Steve has.
I mean, he's been around since 2014, and it's 2023.
And then he had this whole Disney Plus show on top of that. Like, he should be more compelling.
Yeah, and I mean, and also, even to go deeper into that, shouldn't he have more of an opportunity to be in everybody's things? Because wasn't that the sell of the shows? Like, anybody can pop up anywhere, and it's not like, we're going to delegate like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had only these characters you can use, and then the movies, like, anybody can pop up. We saw Hulk and Hawkeye in shows. Like, anybody can pop up anywhere. Like, I just don't know why Anthony Mackie's not being propped up as, like, Captain America through these things. Like, I just think it's too long of a gap between the Thunderbolts movie and Captain America 4 and through Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, that's too much time to just leave Captain America in limbo. And like I said to my, like, if you're talking bigger universe, the Avengers in limbo, like, there's no... That was the big sell, is like, these people are going to come together for something, and like, it just doesn't feel like anything's culminating to anything besides like us being told things are going to culminate to something.
Yeah, he should be, as far as character compellingness, should be on the same like plateau as Wanda. Like, he should be. And Falcon and the Winter Soldier was an opportunity, but what they ended up doing was creating this power broker mystery box that overshadowed.
It's the social media thing that kills. Like, and I guess I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on that, is what, social media has turned into to consume projects. Like, everybody essentially is a reviewer that knows everything now. So,
because it just overshadowed everything that he was going through in that show, which was an interesting kind of narrative. Extremely
interesting narrative. Like, that's still probably my second favorite show. I don't think it's the second best show, but it's my second favorite show out of all those. Because that's what they got, that stuff right. They got John's morality right. They got they got Sam's story right, and they got, Bucky's, coming back to being, his morality as well. They got it right. Like, but what was the other thing that they had to battle with? They had to battle with who's the power broker week in, week out, checking Twitter, who's the power broker, who's the power broker. Like, once that's the only thing people care about, like, they're not going to care about, like, how the show looks or, like, but then what do? They feed into it.
And then they brought Zemo back, and, like, Zemo felt kind of just thrown in there. Like, he didn't really feel like he served.
It was,
that
again, it's like much. A Captain America All-Stars. Like, all right, we're going to find everybody from these Captain America movies and that meant anything and get them in there. And then Hawkeye, same thing. Hawkeye, again, started something strong, and then I still think episode 3 is the best episode that focused on a side character of Echo. And then what does it immediately do? Oh, we're going to bring Florence Pugh back because she's a star. And then we're going to get Vincent D'Onofrio back. So, like, any emotion I had for Echo's gone at this point, because what am I concerned about? I'm concerned about, is Kingpin the big bad of this? Is Yelena who's gonna show up? Like,
yeah,
that's not how you structure shows.
There's an inconsistency that they haven't really solved. I mean, Loki did it.
Yep. By far the closest, if not tackled it. But I mean, I'm gonna talk about this in a little bit. It's one of my it's one of the, not arguments, but it's one of the things I want to bring up during Creed 3, and it's the Jonathan Majors piece of this. Like, I'm thinking back on Loki, and I'm like, the finale was great, don't get me wrong, but if you switch Jonathan Majors out with Richard E. Grant, is it the same? Is it going to be consumed the same?
No.
Or is it because of how incredible Jonathan Majors is why that works so well? It's probably a combination of both.
Yeah, because I think if you do the Richard E. Grant thing, like, that whole ending sequence is different. Because it's more, I think that more becomes a conversation about Loki and, like, him being this survivalist cockroach kind of thing, instead of it being Kang and being, like, ending time. So I think, like, the framing is likely different if that's the reveal. But yeah, I mean, that's a great point. But also, Loki's just a unique situation because it didn't really have. It feels so different from all the other shows. Like, this
feels like an actual structured show from episode 1 to 6,
and there's, like, no real villain.
But it has,
that has to focus on.
But like, even down to different, like, filmmaking things. Like, it felt like production design was high the whole way through. Score was strong. Like, all those things that complement to make a show, which, again, Andor does incredibly well.
Didn't have to focus on side characters, really, because the whole point of Loki was that these side characters are just generic NPC characters. Like, we don't have to put a ton of development into them anyway. And I told you that yesterday. I said, you can make these shows without any side characters. That's fine by me. If that's like, don't just put side characters in a thing just to check a box. You know, like if you're gonna put them in there, give them some development, or just don't have them and just build more around the heroes and villains. That's also fine. Like you can also do that, but they're trying to just check these boxes by like, we need like the quippy guy, and we need like this person, and we need this person. Like, unless you're gonna develop them, like, it's kind of wasted space. And that's kind of the problem. And the only other show that's really gotten away with it was WandaVision, and that's because the first 4 episodes were gimmicks. Like, they were just detached from everything else going on in the show.
And it was the first one, too.
Yeah.
Like, it physically was the first show, too. So there was no expectation other than what people were telling us. Like, the studio was telling us.
So, yeah, we'll see. This Daredevil thing is going to be very interesting just because it's popular enough that people are going to get really mad if it's not good. So
just throw like the whole, like, throw like a, you know, like the rolling TV cart that you had in school. Like, just throw Andor on a rerun on there and put it in the Marvel office and be like, this is how you tell us, like, a season story.
Yeah, this is the bar.
This is the bar. 12 episodes, like, narratively
Was tight. Yep.
Tight the whole time. Your side characters are some of the best work Star Wars has ever had at any capacity. And just, you know, I hate to use the dark and gritty because I don't agree with that argument sometimes, because you need to fit what you need to fit, but it was tonally sure of itself. Like, it knew exactly what it was trying to fit the entire way through.
Yeah.
Where's Bix?
We have some Batman. We have some of the Batman news to get through. So the Penguin spinoff show is slowly forming into form, and none other than Clancy Brown, the GOAT.
He's collecting like his superhero universe Infinity Stones.
Punisher's own Clancy Brown.
The Boys Own, or the Boys U, whatever the show's called.
So he's going to be playing Salvatore Maroni in the Penguin spinoff, which is fun because I don't think he's ever been like a mobster.
Do you think he's going to have an Italian voice?
I don't know. Maybe.
I would love it.
It's
like imagine like it's the deep tone of his voice mixed with like, hey yo,
like the Penguin already has an Italian accent, so like I don't know.
And you can't say that Falcone has it because it's also John Turturro who already had it, so it doesn't count.
Yeah, so I don't know. Clancy Brown, I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm in.
I'm in too. It's cool.
I'm
I
in
like
1,000,000%. I think he just says the gravitas is like, because Salvatore Maroni feels more of like a figurehead than more of a person.
It's a lot of leaning back in chairs with your arms crossed.
A good reference point is to use his why can't I remember the name of Batman? Long Halloween. That's a solid reference point to use. Like, I mean, even in the framing in that, doesn't he sit back in the shadows a lot in that story? Like, even in the first panel, he said he's like sitting in his office and like the shading's hitting him. Like, that's what I think that more or less he's gonna be. So I'll take that. That's cool.
That's cool. And we're shooting soon.
Yeah, we're shooting soon. Well, they're shooting right now for that, and the Batman Part 2 is starting to shoot in November.
Joker's filming.
The Joker movie's filming
Bigger Joker.
now.
Did you see Bigger Joker in the set photos?
I think it's like an idea of like people got inspired from him, and so now they're trying to like they're just following him around and stuff.
Big Joker, Little Joker.
Big Joker, or it's like in his head.
Ooh,
would be interesting.
That's all. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Yeah, it's all in his head.
It's always in his head.
Yeah,
they're gonna do that. They're gonna pull that trick again, where it's all in his head again.
That one got me. I'm sorry. That one got me too. Really got me. And then I was just like, is Zazie Beetz really gonna fall in love with this guy? I was like, maybe it didn't get me. Maybe I got myself.
We have some.
I'm Zazie Beetz from The Harder They Fall. I'll never fall for you.
Hard. Fall hard.
Fall hard. Jonathan Majors is also in that.
He was.
Yeah.
We have some Dune the Sisterhood news, and it's not great.
It's not. It sucks.
So production is officially on hold after I think the news that we said that they were starting production.
Yeah.
The director, the star, and the co-showrunner have all left.
Yeah. Yep. That's
never good.
That's
a real The Flash situation.
It's alarming, but it's also I wonder if they had the wherewithal to tell themselves like, you know, we're not at the Game of Thrones middle seasons level yet. Even for, having a theatrical release that I still think is one of the best movies of 2021 and one of the best science fiction movies. Like, I just don't think they're at the point to, like, tell a prequel when they haven't even fleshed out the entire first book yet. I think that might have been a conversation that was had at Warner Brothers, and my other theory about Warner Brothers is they don't got a lot of money right now, and they're cutting costs wherever they can.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, Warner Brothers has this problem.
They actually gave the money from the Sisterhood and gave it to Clancy Brown.
They just had this problem for a while where they get out in front of their skis a little bit in terms of getting these things and developing multiple projects at once and being like, no, this is going to be great. We're going to create a big cinematic universe around Dune. Like, hold on.
Yeah, hold on. Like, let Denis cook, essentially. Like, let him work, because I think he's setting up the foundation for, like, one of the most, some of the most compelling, like, new age, nuanced, like, sci-fi movies you can ask for. And you gotta let him operate. Like, we haven't even gotten into Dune Messiah yet, and, like, we're asking for it. I was looking forward to this show. I mean, essentially, like, this diving into the lore of the Bene Gesserit is going to be really compelling to some capacity. But I just think, like I said, I think they looked at themselves in, like, the studio room and they were just like, is it time yet to do something like this? Should we maybe wait for part 2 to come out before we do something like that?
Yep.
And then B, money. Like, maybe we need to save a little money right now before James Gunn, because the bulk of your money is going to come from A, the movies, and B, specifically the DC movies. So maybe let some of those DC movies come out and get some more revenue back in before we start, launching shows like left and right.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Speaking of Warner Brothers wanting more money, so we talked last week about how they're either rebooting or continuing or whatever the case is. They want to make more Lord of the Rings movies. And apparently they want Peter Jackson to get back in on this.
Tell them absolutely not.
I can't imagine a world where he does. He got involved in the first Hobbit movie, and then that was it.
Yeah.
And he didn't have anything to do with the second or third ones.
Yeah.
I mean, look, man, Peter Jackson did what he did with those first 3 movies.
And you give so much of yourself
and he was just like, I'm good. I don't need to do anything else. So I can't imagine a world where he would do that. Like, it doesn't really seem like his bag, really, to kind of chase. It doesn't seem like he'd be chasing money, really, because, he doesn't need it.
Why are we making these?
It's... Yeah, I don't know why we're making these.
Like, these are, like, reboots.
Yeah, reboots or continuations or whatever the case is.
Like, obviously, I won't love the fact of, continuation, like, at the service of just to make money. But if these are reboots, that's such a mistake. Like, that's a insane mistake. And, like, this is, like, Hamada level of, like, having no self-awareness about any situation. Like, that's how this feels, of, like, the like that 2016-17 era of Warner Brothers, where, like, they were just running around, like, it's like that SpongeBob meme where, like, the whole file, like, his brain filing was just a mess. Like, this is what it feels like. Like, this is just, it's tone deaf. So I kind of hope this just doesn't come to fruition. Like, if this is going to be a reboot, why are we rebooting movies that came out in, like, the 2000s, like, maybe in the 70s or something? But
yeah, they're re-releasing Return of the King next month.
They need money. I
mean, I'm gonna go see it. So.
Come on, man. That's probably when we're gonna review it.
We talked about those movies last week. Those movies still hold up.
It possibly could be one of the greatest trilogies of all time.
Besides,
it's got the
besides what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah. It's pretty good. These Creed movies are pretty good.
Yeah, but I mean, The Lord of the Rings, those movies still hold up. Like, we talked about the Two Towers and everyone chasing that Battle of Helm's Deep as far as like action set pieces of like war.
Right.
And Return of the King is great. That whole trilogy is great. So if you got 4 hours and some change to watch, I don't want to hear anyone complain about Avatar ever again if they go see these.
Oh my god, 1,000,000%. I still am, for Avatar, I'm just in the realm that, like, Twitter doesn't exist, and like all the people in the theater were like the other people that didn't need to rely on it to feel something.
The movie's made $1 bajillion.
Yeah, it's made $7,000 zillion. It's fine. Both have.
James Cameron's fighting with himself at the top of the box office.
I know. Remember when whatever movie we saw last was. What was the last? Oh, Ant-Man.
Yeah.
They had the Titanic poster when we were walking out, and we both looked, and we were like, "Oh, he's a psycho. He's psychotic for this." I love it.
He re-released Titanic, and then it passed Avatar, and then Avatar passed Titanic.
Now he's self-sustaining. Somebody get the Otto Octavius beam. He is
self-sustaining, and you know how he knows he's self-sustaining.
Yeah. I think he's just having fun at this point.
What are you gonna do? Fire me? I built this.
Yeah, you know what? Instead of fire me, how about I make fire people for the next movie? How about that?
What else do you want from me? So yeah, Creed 3. Let's talk about it. It's obviously the capper to the Creed trilogy, which is an extension of the Rocky Five-ilogy.
There's 6 of them.
Oh, there is 6 of them. I keep forgetting about Rocky Balboa.
It's the best one. No, Rocky 5's the best one.
Kind of like much like Rocky himself, kind of an underdog story. These Creed movies,
both the movies themselves and the story of the movies.
Kind of the sneaky genesis of this reboot continuation kind of era that we're kind of in. I think
you can go back in our episodes. I think I said this like early on when we began doing this, that like Creed, whatever we were talking about, I said Creed was like the tipping point of like everything being rebooted. But you know, if you're gonna do something, you might as well get somebody like Ryan Coogler to start it off.
Yeah, and I mean that Creed movie, that first Creed movie is incredible. I mean, we've talked about it before, and it drew an Oscar nominating performance out of Sly Stallone, which I don't know if anyone thought that he had that in him.
It gets that, you know, Rachel Morrison goes on to be nominated for several, and she's the first woman cinematographer to win a best, not for that movie, but it gets prompted out of that. Ludwig Göransson is like, you know, he's like the new Hans Zimmer, where everybody's trying to get him to do the thing. So, you know, the talent they had on that first Creed movie was it was stellar. And then, I mean, no bigger talent than, you know, Ryan Coogler behind the camera. And I was watching, I made sure I watched it on Friday.
Rachel Morrison, also the filmographer between the latest episode of The Mandalorian.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I watched that first Creed movie, and I hadn't watched that movie since like 2016 or 17. Like, I haven't seen this movie in legitimately like 6 years. I don't know, it's because like I kind of figured out what I wanted to do or anything like that, but I had a much more visceral reaction of like emotion, like triumph, like feeling on this movie. And I know what it is, but I don't know what it is. Like, there's something about this movie. I don't know if it's like the real world circumstance of understanding this is Ryan Coogler's second movie. He kind of gets this franchise. It's a franchise I like loved when I was a kid. Like, I was obsessed with Rocky IV specifically. Like, I remember going to Walmart and like begging for, you know, all the Rocky movies to try to get them too. But I don't know. This movie, there's something special about this first one. Like, the filmmaking is so incredible, and it's so subtle too. There's nothing that's like overtly insane, or like there's no insane tricks, but it goes down to like the thing that made him special for Fruitvale Station. It's like, it's the subtlety of what she brings is what like amplifies, you know, every single little emotion that we have.
Yeah, that first movie is really great. It's one of the best Rocky franchise movies. I mean, it's right up there.
Maybe we'll save that for a little bit, but
it's right up there with the original movies. It carries the
original movie.
Yeah, it carries the legacy of that character of Rocky Balboa and puts him in a really interesting place in his life. And
it also does, but it's not truthfully dependent on that, which I love. Right. Like, it is, but it isn't. Like, the only thing it's dependent on is the fact that Sylvester Stallone's there, and Sylvester Stallone just needs to tell this kid about his dad. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, and, you know, identity, because the big theme for Creed 1 is like self-identity. Like, are you your parent? Like, what are you? Are you makeup of what?
There's so much brilliant meta commentary in the theme of Creed 1. Like, is Adonis just in the shadow of Apollo? Is this movie just in the shadow of Rocky? Like, you know what I mean? There's a really great narrative both on and off the screen with that first movie that really works, and it lends itself brilliantly into the second one. And you know, the second one is the second one's still good. I think I like the second one quite a bit, but it does kind of suffer from like what I think people thought the first one was going to be.
Yep. It's funny that, and you know, something from this franchise too is that each of these movies have had a different director each time, and I think this is another hats off to Ryan Coogler. And then you look at any projects he's done, how tightly he crafts characters as well, I think is something to be said about him. And it's not, like I said, it's not these big character things. It's like small stuff that feels resonant and present the whole time, which some things didn't feel like. There was a kind of a couple scenes in Creed 2 where even down to like line delivery and dialogue that just felt like old Rocky in Creed 2. That was my biggest gripe with that movie. Like, especially, you know, when Michael B. Jordan's given that, you know, him and Rocky are having that dialogue, it's like, you don't think I can beat him? Like, this feels very like Rocky 4,
and yeah, that's the thing. Like, after the first Creed movie came out, a lot of people were like, "Oh, he's got to fight. He's got to fight Drago's kid." Like that. That's like the Rocky narrative.
He's got to beat the guy that killed his dad. And then like they were like, "Okay, yeah, let's do it." And then what that also does is help Rocky put his, because what's the one skeleton outside of Rocky's closet that he needs to, or in his closet? It's
besides training Tommy Gunn.
He settled that
in the streets.
Like Vin Diesel, like one of the patron saints of this podcast said, Vin Diesel, the street always wins.
Yeah, I mean,
Don King actually won in that fight, or he lost essentially.
You lose and you're done. That was such a weird stipulation to put on this street fight.
It was so on the moment too. I actually kind of got to respect it, how quick of a decision he made. Like, I'm dropping this guy if he loses to like 40-year-old Rocky Balboa in the
street fight.
Yeah. In Philly, this is like having home field advantage in a sports game.
But Creed 2, yeah, I mean, it's
Mom, come quick! Rocky's dad's fighting in the street. What?
But that's kind of the problem with Creed 2 is like Creed 1 was so good and such like a film that like, the fact that Creed 2 kind of almost reverted back to like the Rocky status quo was disappointing.
And we're not talking this is not big time. Like, it's not, there's nothing even, it's very subtle, but you could, like I said, you can tell some of the line delivery
if you had flipped Creed 2 and Creed 1 and like the plot of Creed 2 was the plot of Creed 1 and like Creed comes out of the shadows and he's fighting Drago's son, you'd be like, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And then like Creed 2 ends up being like the plot of Creed 1 kind of, and you're like, whoa, like this franchise is getting better.
Yeah.
But, you know, just so happened that they did the standalone thing and made this be like, no, we're making a real movie here. And then like Creed 2, like, all right, we're going to give you the Creed Drago thing.
Yeah.
Like,
however, there still is a lot of movie in Creed 2.
Yeah.
And, you know, some of my favorite parts of Creed 2 is how primal some bits of that movie feel, especially between the relationships between people too. I mean, a big part of that movie that I love, and I remember I saw this movie on Thanksgiving Day in 2018. I'll never forget. I went with my dad and my brother to go. So we were like, we're leaving. We're going to go see Creed 2. And like, I don't know why I felt so emotional. Like, it's just, I think Michael B. Jordan operates the best in his most savage primal moments of acting. Like, that's where Michael B. Jordan is like A-list actor. Like, that's why you get Michael B. Jordan for stuff like that. Like, in that moment where he's being the most human of human, that's where I think he thrives. And like, you know, him screaming or him training or him, you know, in Creed 2, one of my favorite bits, him just hitting the canvas in Creed 2, like, that's where he's at his best.
Yeah. And I love
until he stepped behind the camera.
Yeah. I love the dichotomy of the relationship between Creed and Rocky and the connection between Drago and his father. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a nice kind of mirror parallel that's going on there. There's a lot in Creed 2 that's good. Yeah. It just, you know, it just felt like a Rocky movie. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Which is not a slight, because, you know, if you start reflecting, you're like, man, is Rocky like one of the best franchises ever in terms of like consistency and quality? And like, yeah, like it might be. But, and then, you know, this Creed 3 is kind of the culmination in this whole Creed franchise, right? Like, it's fully stepped out of the shadows of Rocky.
Yeah. Another meta commentary. I mean, Michael B. Jordan said it too. Like, once he knew like Ryan Coogler can do it, and I think for Ryan Coogler I think Ryan Coogler probably would have directed this movie, but he essentially had to bury his friend a couple months ago, like, or year, like the last, you know, two and a half years. Like, that's too much emotionally for him to take. So, again, who better to do it, like Michael B. Jordan said, than who better to live and, you know, have Adonis go on this, you know, this last bit of odyssey, but himself, like the person that plays him, which is a really good point.
Yeah, so, and Slash Stallone, not in this, not by his choice.
I mean, it is by his choice, but
he's been at odds with the producer, one of the producers of the Rocky franchise for quite some time. But Stallone has had nothing but positive things to say about Michael B. Jordan, saying like he really
likes him. Yeah,
he's like, really proud of him for this movie, and you know, proud of the characters that they helped kind of create, and you know, if MBJ ever came calling to do something in the future, like Stallone would be down. Like, so, you know, it's cool. You know, like, it's not often that a guy from the 70s, 80s who built this universe.
I mean, one of the most synonymous characters to actors of all time, too.
Yeah, and, you know, so it's not very often that those people are so generous with their characters in their universe and being so complimentary. So kind of hats off to Sylvester Stallone for being so supportive, because we've seen countless times where people have gotten super bitter over stuff like that. So it seems like his frustration is directed in the appropriate place as far as this is concerned. But this movie, Creed 3, first off, is doing very well.
Yeah.
Money wise, it's done over almost $100 million. I
think it did
worldwide.
Over for the weekend.
Yeah, which is, you know, it sounds like pennies compared to like big blockbuster movies, but for a movie like this, that's really great. I think it's the highest opening for a Rocky movie.
And for a sports movie, I believe this is the highest opening for any sports movie ever.
Just a fantastic feather in the cap for Michael B. Jordan. Like we said, his directorial debut. It's being received very well. Critics, audience. Critics, I think it's 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and audiences at 96%. So people are really liking this movie. Obviously, it is striking while the actor iron is hot. It has, obviously, Michael B. Jordan stars in it alongside Jonathan Majors, who is, we've talked about on this podcast heaps of times.
I mean, it's like him and Pedro Pascal right now are like feel like the two biggest actors on the planet.
And, I mean, for good reason. I mean, both Majors and Michael B. Jordan are great in this movie. And Michael B. Jordan was very kind of vocal about the stylistic choices he was going to make for this movie, and his hands were definitely all over it. It does some really unique things, especially in the third act, that I think we'll talk about. He talked about his obviously his anime influences. Big movie for the weebs.
Oh, unbelievable! Yeah, and there's so much homage in here. Just either from subtle homage to, you know, full out, you know, pulls from anime. And I mean, but you know, what's so incredible that he did is none of them felt A, cheap, or B, like they, you know, stupid, and like, you know, just a callback for callback's sake. Like, they meant something. They meant
it was
something.
Very cool. I loved, you know, just the choices he made in the boxing matches in particular, because, you know, with these Rocky movies, like, I think Rocky's kind of cornered the market on boxing sequences. Like, how do you do them different than they've done them? And these are some of the most unique boxing sequences I've ever seen.
Some of the tightest, and this might be some of the best in the entire franchise. And I mean, all right. Oh man, I don't want to say this, but like, you know, the Rocky movies are incredible, awesome, cool. I mean, and this is also just technology-based, choreography-based. It's not the 70s and 80s anymore. It's the 2010s and the 2020s. Like, obviously, things are going to get better, but this might have some of the best. I think Creed 1, just, again, it feels very personal in Creed 1, and it feels like a film in Creed 1. So that's why it's not that these other two don't, but like specifically in Creed 1, it feels like a film. So that's why those sequences are really good, but it's mixing that fast-paced nature with, like, you could feel these hits. Like, these hits genuinely feel kind of real in this movie.
Yeah. And, I mean, in classic Rocky / Creed formula. The plot's not overly complicated, but it doesn't have to be. The story is, Adonis Creed is retired.
Mm-hmm.
He's
washed. You're washed.
He's like 34.
Yeah. Being washed at 33 sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Stephen A. Smith called him out on national television.
It's so crazy, like, comparing, like, Creed's career to Rocky's career. Like, Rocky was fighting, like, into his 60s, and then Creed was, like, 32, and he's like, I'm good.
I'm done. I've done everything for the sport I can.
He retired. Conlon's back. He fought Conlon in the beginning of this.
Yep. He got out of jail.
His big retirement fight was against Conlon.
Mm-hmm.
Beats him, retires, and now he's just living
Don
life.
King.
Yeah, he's promoting. He's in his Floyd Mayweather bag. Mm-hmm. He's promoting fights. He's training the up and coming crew, and then his whole world is turned upside down by the return of his long lost friend.
Yep,
Jonathan Majors.
Yeah. Oh, man. You're Jonathan Majors from everything that people like now.
Damian Anderson.
Yeah. Diamond Dame.
Diamond Dame, we get a little backstory that Dame was like the boxer of the duo, and then an incident occurs. Dame goes to prison for 18 years. Creed kind of
and then you watch Creed 1 and Creed 2, you're like, oh, that's what he's been doing.
Creed chose to forget about his best friend, and then Dame's come back home, and he's like, I still want to be the best. I want to be the boxer. I want to be a boxer.
Yeah, the thing, like a good, bit of storytelling in here is like Dame was like, he was Golden Glove, so like essentially he probably, and he says it to him multiple times in the movie, like, you're living my life right now, like, you're like, imagine sitting in a prison cell while you watch somebody live your life. Like, this is supposed to, like, I'm better than you were ever gonna be probably if I never stopped boxing. So he comes back so he's 35, probably 34, 35. So he's a little older than him, but he's just like, you know what, I'm back, and I'm not gonna lose a bet. I stayed in shape. Boy, did he stay in shape. he stayed in shape.
What kind of gyms do they have over there? Those prisons.
I don't know, but stayed in shape, stayed ready to fight, and he's back.
He's like, get me in the ring.
Yeah, get me in the just, but. A big thing is that Adonis feels like he owes him.
And Wood Harris is like, bad idea.
Yeah, bad idea. Like, you don't own this guy anything. Like, look at your life now. What are you going to do? Bring up the past? And he's just like, you never know what a third movie in a trilogy does. Of course I'm going to bring up the past.
Yeah, so he's like, brings him in the gym. Dame's a hothead.
He's, they call him old man, which calling him old man is what calling Adonis baby Creed does the same thing.
Yeah, triggered. And then, Creed is trying to orchestrate this fight between his shining star at his gym.
Well, he was trying to fight. Dun dun dun. Drago's back.
Yep.
Drago and him are friends now because Rocky.
It's Rocky.
Because Rocky smoothed over everything from the Cold War, so they're buds.
They're friends now. So he's setting up a fight between Drago and his little pupil.
Felix,
I guess.
Felix. Yep.
Felix Cruz.
Was it Felix Cruz? Who's to say? But yeah, the two of them are going to fight.
And then Drago gets his arm broken.
Yeah, he gets his arm. So they're at a signing party. So all Bianca's back, and their child is 8, something like that, 8, 9. Their child's back. She was great as well. They actually
amazing!
picked a deaf actress to portray their daughter as well, which is a really good touch. So yeah, she's in there too, and they're at this party for Bianca. Bianca, I mean, going further into her story, she's her hearing's it's getting worse. Her hearing loss is getting worse. So as a preventative measure, she stopped singing and she stopped recording, and now she's a big time producer in Hollywood. So they're at a signing party. He invites Dame over, and Dame is just Dame's chilling. He's chilling there, scoping out. That's one thing. I mean, a little character subtlety, and I think Jonathan Majors amplifies it. I love how observant Dame is in every situation he is. Like, again, this is just Jonathan Majors being an incredible actor. It's just a little subtleties of the way he looks at things are so like analytical, like the way he looks at any situation. I mean, it comes to a head in the first fight he has against Felix, but Drago gets his arm broken by one guy, pulls out a baton and breaks his hand, and you're like, okay, you don't think twice about it.
Yeah.
But I guess Chekhov's gun storytelling. Put a pin in that for a second.
Yeah. So Creed's like, well, what do I do now?
Who was he gonna fight? Did you watch Rocky 1 by any chance?
Yeah, that's what this is. It's the Dame becomes the dark reflection of Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
Essentially.
What do you mean by that?
Come on, man.
Oh, that's great.
But that's exactly what happens. Creed's like, he literally says that, I'm pretty sure, to Wood Harris.
Yeah, he's just like, or he says it's to Felix and his mom too. Like,
you remember Rocky 1?
Yeah,
right?
he said, remember Rocky got it. It's like, look, I love Michael B. Jordan. You know what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
Gotta work on that line delivery a little bit sometimes.
So yeah, it's that's what this is. We're gonna give the underdog from the underground a title shot, and boy, if Dame isn't really just
so
not a great guy.
Yep. So they have a little conversation before, and then the filmmaking happens, and they have this shot where he walks into the other hallway, and like they look at each other through the wall, and I'm like, wait a minute, is Michael B. Jordan good at this? And then I'm like, wow, this is. Yeah, that's literally, and the definition of directing and cinematography. It's supposed to invoke a reaction and and I'm like, wait a second.
I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, what's the layout of this room?
Yeah, there's like genuine like good lighting and like they're looking at each other. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, Dave gets into the fight with Cruz.
Yeah, whoa,
man,
analytical. So you find out he fights dirty, but it's to the point you can't notice. So, again, there's this like stylistic choice that Jonathan does where like, I love how he runs he like gallops out of the corner when he goes to fight somebody. So it's like, it's a lot to take in somebody like, cause usually boxers are like that cool walk. Like he like gallops at you. So you're like, uh-oh.
And this is where we get kind of like the anime influence of like the eyes, like the close up on the eyes. Like,
and even before even like the close ups of like, the belt, like their eyes, like their tattoos, like all that stuff. So like you're kind of like anime setting up like these two pillars to kind of fight each other to come to a head. So they start fighting and Felix is like, all right, I'm the heavyweight champion. This is no issue to me. And then Dame lays some hits and he's like, yo, wait a minute. This guy's kind of strong too. Like this guy's kind of powerful, but like
hits him in the arms.
Well, exactly. So he starts hitting him in places where no ref can kind of see anything, but like he hits him in like his armpit, so he kind of deads his arm. He hits him in his elbow. He deads hits him in his side, and then the big one is he comes over. He intentionally misses the punch and cuts his eye, and he's just
with an elbow, yeah,
right, and you can't see anything. It's just like normal action.
Hits him with like a knee, like knees him at one point.
Right. Well, and they wrap each other up. He hits him with the knee. Can't do anything. Like whatever you're supposed to say. Like this, they're just.
Well, the referee takes points from him, but like Dame's not in this to win a decision.
No, he's here to knock him out. So again, we get there and analytical Dame, he's sitting there and like his crew's in his corner trying to and Dame's not listening to any of them. He's like, I'm good. I'm about to kill this guy, so I'm good. So he's looking at him. He's just like, he looks at him and there's a close on his arm. He's just like, I love that little head tilt he does. He's like, I'm good. No, this fight's over.
Well, it's like in the beginning, like him and Creed both have that checkmate line. That's essentially what it is. Like checkmate. Like I got you.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, I'm good. So goes up to Felix. Ends that fight, puts Felix down
in the hospital,
and he's unconscious, like he knocks him completely out, and his mom's losing it. And Dame's now the heavyweight champion of the world off of one fight, and so this is maybe one of the only gripes I have with this movie. I think Dame needed to fight again in that movie.
It is very weird. It is weird that he doesn't defend his title at all. Yeah. He just goes from being the heavyweight champion of the world, and then he fights Creed.
Is that not in fear of recreating something like Rocky V?
Right.
I think that's like the worst version of doing something like where it's just a montage of like punches being thrown like over and over again. Like I think Creed has a little bit more, subtlety than that, the Creed franchise. So
I think you're right. I think it is a little. I mean, it's Rocky, so it doesn't really matter. But it is a little goofy that he built up so much gravitas. Well,
this movie's only 2 hours. Yeah. Like, this movie's like an hour 56. Like this movie probably could have been 220. Yeah. And I think that I have an idea. I don't know how good, and this is why I'm not writing in Hollywood yet, but I had an idea of what Creed should do. Like, I would have liked a situation where Creed would have had to fight Felix and put Felix down and be like, Felix, I know I just put you down, but like, I'm gonna go take care of us real quick. Like, I needed to do, like, I wish it was a situation where like in Creed 2 where like Dame doesn't get it, like he doesn't get the belt, but like, or maybe he does get the belt, and like on the way that Creed's coming back, he has to fight Felix for the right to fight Dame. So he's like, I gotta put you down, man. Like, I don't like that I have to do this. And like, again, it could play into their past of like they were doing bad things. Like he even says in the movie, like, we weren't saints when we were kids. We were bad kids, but like no kid deserved.
You can either do that, or you can have Dame fight Drago and have Dame just like you can establish Dame as even more of a threat.
Well, I think
and have Dame like flatline Drago in one round.
Yeah,
like,
I think
shoot.
What would have been better is instead of like maybe Felix is the one that gets hurt. And so, like, Drago, like, you know, Drago gets the belt, but it's nothing nefarious. And then, like, what if Dame, because we talked about, like, Drago's like a brute. Like, he's like, that's the whole thing. Yeah. He's a full out, like, brute. Like, I even said it, like, baby Drago's not a good boxer. Like, he's not, like, I think they even set it up. Like, he's not a great boxer, but he's just too powerful for these people to keep beating. So I would have been interesting if like Dame's power, but like Creed's, like boxing prowess, like that's Dame, like mixed into one. Like it's like Apollo Creed mixed with like Rocky and like Ivan and Mr. T, like all amalgamated into one fighting style. So
yeah, I think you're right because spoiler alert for the end of this movie, like Creed beats Dame and like. Dame, your career is over, bro.
Yeah, there's nothing else you're gonna do.
Like you won one fight, you won the heavyweight title, and then you got knocked out by a retired Adonis Creed. So, like your career is over. Like build your resume a little bit, Dame. Right. But yeah, we get to the end of that, and Creed's like, man, he visits his mom, and like this whole time, his mom is like. Kind of skeptical of Dame coming back, and you don't really. I mean, you kind of get why, like, because like it's clear that like Dame is not the best person, but
and who has more hindsight than a mom?
Yeah, and so she kind of shows Creed all these letters that Dame had sent to him while he was in prison, and Dame makes mention like, I wrote you a bunch of times and you never wrote back, and Creed was like, I never got them, and it's because his mom was taking the letters, and she shows him this picture of Dame from when he was in jail.
Oh, I need one.
Dun dun dun.
The guy that broke Drago's arm was sent by Dame because they were in prison together.
Ah man,
just taking like squad flicks in prison.
He's not some underdog from the underground. He's just
you're a fraud, Dame.
He is a fraud. So Creed, big confrontation on the beach. I just like that Creed knocks some guy out.
And what did I say? You know why it's great? Because like he knocks this guy out in like enemy territory, but like also he's the heavyweight champion of the world. So who's gonna like respond? Because you're probably also gonna get knocked out.
Everyone pulls guns out.
Yep. And then Dame turns into like a crime boss. He like takes the gun and he's just like, you gotta be punchy. And like the only reason I'll let that live is because it was Jonathan Majors saying that line.
It's man, it's he's just a villain.
Yeah, he is.
He's a classic old school villain, like big heel turn, like you suck, Creed.
Yeah,
I'm the best.
Yo
I was
mama.
always the best. Yo mama.
It doesn't say. He should have said that. That would have been great.
Like
he calls into First Take.
Yeah, he's like, I'm the champ. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
Creed's like, you lied to me. He's like, and
then he's just like, yeah. And then he's like, also too, on that First Take bit is the best part of the movie. It's not, but it is.
He's like, yeah, you suck, Creed.
Yeah, he said Apollo Creed should be ashamed, and he's like, all right.
So yeah, because he, Creed's like, I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it. He's talking to Tessa Thompson. And she's like, what are you going to do about this? He's like, I don't know.
Yep.
I guess it's Rocky. I guess I got to fight him. Yep. He gets on First Take, and Stephen A. Smith it's a nighttime edition of First Take for some reason. And
Stop poking holes in the logic.
Stephen A. Smith is having a one-on-one interview on First Take. Where's Molly Karam? What's going on?
Or Michael Irving? Where's everybody? I would love Michael Irving to talk to somebody in any type of movie setting where it's controlled.
So he's like, look, you suck, Creed.
You're washed.
I got to hear this from Stephen A. Smith now. He's like, look.
He said, you were the greatest boxer of all time 3 years ago. He's like,
what are you going to do about Jonathan Majors? He won one fight. What's going on?
It's the same question that they asked Scott Lang and Ant-Man. What are you going to do about Jonathan Majors?
And then Jonathan Majors calls in to First Take.
Hilarious. Absolutely incredible.
Stephen A. Smith goes, hold on, we're getting a phone call.
We're getting a call that we didn't screen and we don't know who's on the line, and this could be a fake person.
Yeah, what is this? WAFN?
Yeah,
what's going on?
It doesn't matter. Remember when Shaq called in that one time on his radio show?
And Dame's like, you got something to say, Creed? He's like, we gonna do this on TV? And he's like, yup.
Yep.
Creed's like, all right, fine. Me and you, one-on-one, for the belt,
Yeah.
for the strap. I'm coming out of retirement. We're not going to notify any commissions. We're just doing this.
It's all off screen. What's not off screen is what the staple of these movies and what makes these movies so popular is the training montage. And this movie's probably got one of my. They pulled J. Cole out for this one. The whole the Dreamville squad made the music for this movie. All for the better. Man, that training montage.
Creed, you got to get back in shape.
Yeah, I love this. They pulled the Rocky Balboa for this one. They literally did exactly what they did in Rocky Balboa. Yeah. Duke Jr. just did what Duke Sr. did without the neck crack.
He's like, yeah, you suck.
Yeah, you stink. You're washed. You suck.
You're 33. You're over the hill.
Yeah, you're old. Might as well die.
Rocky won a fight when in his 60s, but it doesn't matter.
He didn't win that fight.
He did in the alternate ending.
Oh, he did do. Wow. Remember when? Oh, the mid 2000s for alternate endings was that time. Remember I Am Legend? They're making a whole movie with Michael B. Jordan about this thing.
Yeah. So Creed's like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm inexplicably ripped for being a retired fighter.
Well, I mean, I told this to you before. There was parts of it where he looked way.
Yeah.
Big. So I think I think he did this in the second one and in this one. Like, I think he shot it in a different way or at different times.
Yeah.
So like he shot it before he went into like the full workout, and then he shot the other scenes because like.
So getting like classic dueling montages. Creed's doing his montage. Dame's doing his montage. It's a little more. What I liked about this, when they do the dueling montages, they usually show like a difference or a dichotomy. Like in this, they're kind of training like the same way, which I thought was cool. You know what I mean? Like Rocky IV is like a perfect example. Like Drago's in the lab doing steroids with all the machines, and Rocky's just like real tough American grit working style. But
because you're me. Like,
yeah, exactly.
You're me. Like I should be you right now. Like I should be the one that's like, I'm done boxing.
Whereas like this montage, like they're basically doing the same type of stuff. It's not like Dame's slacking off. Like he's not like resting on his laurels as the heavyweight champion. Like he's training very, very hard, and Creed is training he brings Drago in to train, and Drago's just whooping him over these. Yeah. Drago's like, maybe we should not do it. If he dies, he dies.
Yeah. No, Drago's the opposite. He's like, I don't want to lose my friend. I love Baby Creed.
I don't want to do to him what my dad did to his dad.
I can't do that. I love this guy. He's so freaking cool. After I started to stop punching this guy, I actually kind of like this guy.
And Creed's cool. Like, no, we're gonna keep going. I need to overcome my demons if I'm gonna win this boxing match. In the meanwhile, he kind of comes full circle honesty with what happened with Dame, why Dame went to prison.
Some of the better parts of this movie are some of the bigger themes and the emotional themes in this movie, and that's, essentially, being vulnerable and
opening
like
up.
How do you deal with your emotion? A lot of that comes through the way of his daughter. His daughter's starting to, get bullied, but her way of dealing with this is how Adonis deals with things, and that's by punching things. And like she tells him, like, you can do that for you because you're a boxer, but she's like 8, like she can't do this.
And then he's like, what if she also became a boxer?
Yeah. I'm gonna see, you said this movie didn't have any Easter eggs or hidden messages, and I disagree 100%.
Yeah, so he basically says
they're gonna do $1 million baby situation for the next movie.
I thought about that.
Without the head about cracking your skull open.
But he basically outlines the reason why Dame went to prison was they ran afoul of the man that kind of ran the group home where they grew up, who abused them physically or otherwise. It's not set out right, but it can be implied that there was more than just physical abuse going on there. And Dame and Adonis run by this guy at a 7-Eleven, and Adonis just like, hey, you remember?
Snaps immediately. And that's one of the best things about this is what I really like about Adonis Creed in this franchise is he's not some upstanding citizen, even throughout the whole thing. Like, he's got flaws. Like, I think they got to the point in the Rocky movies where Rocky at some point, what we were relying on is the idea of triumph, and like that's why Rocky 1 is like, considered one of the top movies ever, is because it was the first implication of that, and then the movies kept doubling down, and like how hard you get hit, how fast you get back up, or how you need to get back up. But like, Adonis is a little bit more complex going into, you know, his later movies, because it's not that simple for him. Like, he's got a lot of demons that he's fighting too, and like, this is something we didn't know about this before this, and now this is kind of how he has to and so how does he deal with it? How did he deal with it in the beginning of Creed 1? How does he deal with it in Creed 2? He's very headstrong, he heads into things very quickly, and he's like, what does he do on the beach? Immediately, like, this is after he has a family, and like, he knocks the guy out clean. Like, that's how he deals with things, with his fists.
Yeah.
And like, the whole thing is like, you know, Bianca's trying to tell him, like, you can't do that forever. Like,
watch me.
Watch me. I'm gonna do Creed 4.
I'm actually settling scores with my fists.
Yeah.
Is what I'm doing. I'm resolving character
Yeah, I
arcs.
resolved my daddy's issues. I resolved my surrogate daddy's issues with these fists. I paid for this house with these fists.
Yeah, so he beats this guy. What he didn't know is this guy had goons with him.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going after him, and then young Dame pulls a gun, and the cops show up, and Michael B. Jordan runs. Well, Adonis runs.
Mm-hmm.
Dame gets arrested, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
And Adonis has lived with that for 18 years, thinking that it was his fault. And everyone's like, no, it's not your fault.
Yeah.
You know, Dame made his choice. Like,
Yep.
it's fine. And he's like, it's not fine.
Yeah.
But now I have to beat him in this boxing match.
Yep.
And, and that's what we do. We get, and then this is where
Would you want him to like hug at the end of this movie? No, we got a box.
we got a box. It's a boxing movie.
Yeah.
We're gonna box, and we get the most stylized Rocky boxing matches of all time with this final fight between Dame and Adonis.
I mean, breathtaking. It is, like you said, it's stylized. It's potent. Like, it is potent. Like, Michael B. Jordan behind the camera with anime influence. That's a potent mix. Gives me the goosebumps. Like, oh god, it's so good.
We get the first 2 rounds, which is pretty standard boxing.
Oh my! I still can't believe this was a real thing that he pulled. Like, it was something I said to you after I watched the movie. I was like, it is the single most innovative way I've ever seen in this franchise of passing the rounds. Like, they launch into like, all right, so they launch into like this anime dreamscape.
Yeah, because it's the first 2 rounds, like I said, are like normal, like they're just boxing.
You know what's also, the score starts picking up, and then it flips into like this like choir-esque like big like just, you know, women singing, and I'm like, wait, like I'm on like a thrill ride, like it's insane.
Then we get to the 3rd round,
And like they're sitting, and like they start seeing the child versions of themselves, and they walk. Even the way he's swinging the camera around is very like Showdown-esque. Like he does this circular pan around, and like they're walking the opposite direction, and it's just like, you know, they're circling each other like predators, and then it's on, and like they start hitting each other, like
the crowd vanishes.
Disappears. Yep, he hits him and he gets knocked back into like a cell, and then he, you know, Adonis starts hitting Dame, and like it's the same, you know, I guess, you know, like pad that, you know, was in the old gym that they used to be in together. So, you know, where Leon was, and it's just, oh man, there's so many stylistic choices that he's taking.
The colors are changing. Like,
and the back, every hit, there's like, it feels like the's like lightning cut. Like, it's so much, and I'm like, this is incredible.
It's
like,
nuts. It's a nutty choice.
Yeah,
to do.
So
it works.
Well.
It works incredibly well. Like, you know, you can tell coming off of this that like Michael B. Jordan has a knack. He's got this. He can do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, directing, like he could do this.
Yeah, like he might be one of the better action directors that we find,
because like the choices he made in lesser hands could really come off really goofily.
Yeah, I wonder. You know what would be a great movie, like because I know I know Jonathan Majors and him are like really good friends now. Like they're like, it feels like they're like best friends now. Like just the way they're talking about each other, like they're really fond of each other. Like I would love like a Ryan Coogler written and produced movie that Michael B. Jordan directs, which he has Jonathan Majors star. I don't know what type of narrative it would be, but I feel like a movie like that would go absolutely insane.
Yeah, there's some crazy insane things going, and they, you know, by the time the sequence ends, they both throw right hands, they land on each other.
They do the Dragon Ball thing.
It's the Dragon Ball thing. It's a Naruto thing where they land the punch at the same time, and there's that wide shot of them both like eating the punch, and then like we're returned to reality, and we're jumping into the final round, and you're like, whoa,
what happened? Like, what? It's round 12? Like, what? He's like, and that was a thrilling ending to the first 11 rounds. I'm like, First of all,
so
where's
you
Max
realize
Kellerman?
like they've been at war with each other that whole time.
But it's such a way to make it personal. Like, this is one of the most personal fights in this entire franchise now.
Yeah.
And you feel it. You feel it times a million. And then they're in round 12, and this is it. Like, I'll see you in a minute. Like, I'll be right back. And then, Dame starts to launch into the thing. All right, I'm starting to notice, like, what's broken in him. Like, I'm going to go after it. But Creed's like, I have to put him down. Like, this is like, I as much as I don't want to do this, I have to put him down now. This is what
And the great thing about that, like, Adonis's camp knows how analytical Dame is, because Duke Jr. even says to Adonis, like, he's watched all your fights. Like, he knows where to target you.
Yeah, he said now that he's comfortable, he's going to start fighting dirt. He's going to start using his things now, his little things. Oh, you want to talk stakes? This is how you set up stakes that aren't like the world's going to blow up. Like, the stakes is that if Dame wins, like, the whole past can come out, and then Adonis's whole legacy that he worked for to build his own Creed name without his father's could be ruined from this if Dame wins this fight.
Yeah.
Because people aren't going to listen to Dame or anything about him if he loses this fight, which he does. But if Dame wins this fight, like, Adonis's whole life could essentially crumble from that. So that is, I just thought about that. This fight has a lot of stakes in it.
Yeah, big time. And then we get to the last round. Dame rattles Creed with a gut punch that, again, straight anime, like, the you feel it, and it shows the shot of Creed's back, and, like, it's like the
sweat's coming off of his back. Like, it's insane.
Drops him. And then, of course, Rocky, it's a Rocky movie, so get up, Creed. Bells, dong, dong. He gets up, and then puts it on him. Puts it on him and puts him down.
Yep, so he's waiting for him to try the dirty move. He said he's going to do it. He's going to try to do something. He's going to try to hit you in some place that's illegal or shouldn't. And then as soon as he does it, you're the better boxer. Like, you're the boxer out of you guys. So wait for it.
Yeah, he sees through Damon's guard.
It's so, and they do like the anime, like where the background's like moving in fast motion while he's doing it. Like, he opens his arms up and then he hits him, and then it's like the music like swells, and then he comes back. I wasn't not expecting that second punch, and I'm like, everybody was in the theater clapping at that punch. It's like, holy crap, this is everything. This is insane.
And puts him down, puts him out, knocks him out cold. Creed, you've done it. You're the best.
Creed. You've got your trilogy.
You're the world champ again.
You're the world champ, and then you're gonna just retire.
Yeah.
Maybe Felix will be the world champ, or maybe it will be Drago.
Maybe someday.
Maybe Drago got better at boxing since then.
Yeah, and then Creed wins, and then he's celebrating, and he's like, "Let me go talk to Dame."
Yeah.
And they have a real nice moment at the end of this movie.
And again, this isn't the black and white morality of the original. Come on, man. This isn't the black and white. You had to get me back from earlier. This isn't the black and white morality from the original Rocky movies. Like, come on. There's actual, like, ambiguity and, gray area and all and it's real. Like, this is real life. Like, Dame, again, as much as we say it about, like, Dame also, like, as much as we say is, like, Adonis isn't the, like, best person, like, Dame's also not the worst person in the world.
No.
He's not a horrible, like, he's very cordial to his family, too. Like, he's very calculated about it, but he's not, like...
He did have that guy jumped.
But, like, to, like, Creed's family himself, like, he's very, like, he's, like,
He was all right.
He's all right.
He was also a little manipulative there when he was, like, projecting, like, don't you hate someone's doing your own thing? This is a metaphor for how I feel about your husband.
Sure. But I just mean in the sense of, like, of him being the villain of this, like, he's
he's not the worst person in the world.
Exactly. Tommy Gunn, though.
He's a scumbag.
Is he?
Yeah.
Is he?
Yeah.
Or is Don King a scumbag?
Both.
BOFF, both. But yeah, they have a really, really great heart-to-heart to end this movie, too. And, like, it hurt me. I don't know if it's because it was Jonathan Majors, but I was like, wow, like, this is actually, like, his career is over. Like, he's 35, his career's done. Like, one and done, like, that's it. And, like, not only is your career done, like, you're probably going to be forgotten after this. And,
yeah, like, you're Milli Vanilli.
Yeah, like, where do you go after this?
He's got no skills. And he says it to Creed, like, this is all I know. Like, I'm a boxer.
Yeah. Oh, what if he trains Creed for the next movie? And he teaches Creed the ways
of
dirty boxing?
Of dirty boxing? I mean, yeah, that's ultimately what happens with these movies. Maybe Dame and Creed form, like, a super coaching team. and they
this is just Cobra Kai.
they coach Creed's daughter how to fight.
Oh, I'm getting there. Give me a second. I'm getting there.
But then, like, okay, like, it's a nice heart-to-heart moment, but also the weird thing about it is, like, Dame was like, man, you got people waiting back on you to celebrate. And Creed's like, yup.
See you later, Dame.
Leaves. Like, he didn't invite him, like, to hang out, nothing. He was just like, see you later.
I think that might have been kind of nice if, like, he bought Dame back and, like, you don't need to be angry or you don't need to.
It would have been nice, but he was just like, get out of here, man. Go celebrate with your family. And he's like, I will.
Yeah.
You stay here and be sad.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a little odd. And then he goes in the ring with his wife and his daughter, and they have a nice moment. Training in the ring. Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 dun.
Congratulations, Creed. You've rockied.
You've done it. You've done a Rocky.
You've done a Rocky.
This is a good movie.
I think so too. Like, this movie was, it's enjoyable. It's serviceable. It's credible. Like, it's got all the intangibles of what make, these modern movies that, aren't these superhero movies really good. And again, Mission Impossible does this very well it's this idea that going so deep into your franchise, you're not getting complacent. Like, Mission Impossible is the gold standard. I think Creed is, has a silver medal in that right now of, like, your older franchises that have been running for this long, being understanding of the fan base, but also making movies, like actually making good movies on top of that as well. So really pleased. I'm really happy for team and company, and specifically Michael B. Jordan, that, he just, like, he unlocked part 2 of his game. You know what I mean? Like, he unlocked the second part of his game. So, I mean, maybe I'll ask you, what's your favorite actor, director debut? Like, actor turned director debut.
Ooh, that's a good one. Actor turned director debut. Man, it's trying to think. Did Stallone ever direct any of the Rocky movies?
Yes, he did. I think didn't he direct 2?
Because that
didn't he direct Rocky 2?
I think.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought he did direct Rocky 2.
I think you're right.
Yep.
That would be it then, because for him to step out of the shadows of Rocky 1 and do that is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Like, that Rocky could have easily been like a one-hit wonder. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yep. Sure.
And for him to do that with Rocky 2, and I mean, he, since it's a debut, but he also directed Rocky 6, which is also really great. But as far as, like, a debut for a guy that, like, wasn't doing this, you know what I mean? Like, it wasn't his thing, really. Like, I don't think a lot of people thought of Sylvester Stallone as, like, oh yeah, this guy could direct movies. You know what I mean? But for him to star in Rocky 1, then it was his kind of idea, and then for him to actually get behind the camera for Rocky 2, and Rocky 2 is great. Like, it does everything that the first one did, but Rocky wins in the end, which is also great, and I think that would probably be mine. I mean, quite frankly, like, this movie could also be up there. Like, Creed 3 could also be up there. Like,
he did a really great job for a first
like,
movie.
when you talk about a guy bringing something different to the table.
Yeah. He genuinely, if we want to get into this conversation, he genuinely might have, like, changed the way that movies are going to be, like, third acts of some of these movies are going to be made, because how many of these people are probably anime nerds and just have never said anything? Like, he kind of made it okay, like, how you translate that to live action. Like, I genuinely think he might have changed the way that we, that we shoot some of these movies, and especially in the third act. Like, how do you get after fight sequences, and, not really the paying homage part, but, like, the act. I mean, yes, but the actual act of the fighting, like, how visceral and how brutal it is, but how kind of clean it is too, and how grand it is. That's what anime is. It's like the grandest of grand scale.
Yeah, it's just you're building to the fight.
Yeah,
and what kind of lends itself to that more than a boxing movie.
Exactly, right.
So yeah, I'd say Stallone.
I'm probably gonna say Paul Dano in Wildlife is one that I just that's when I remember that I was just like, I looked and I was like, Paul Dano directed this movie, and this movie's actually great. Carey Mulligan and Jake Gyllenhaal, I really enjoy that movie from 2018. One of my favorite movies from that year, and it's somebody that feels like an auteur, and you pick up so much stuff. I mean, the answer that people are probably waiting for is probably John Krasinski, but I mean, that's still a good thing. Like, you need some of these things. I mean, it's like having, a job and you keep moving. It's like having a job and then, you can be in the realm of like your store or whatever it may be, but there's like, there's different levels. There's like corporate levels, HR, like all these different things. Like, that's what I feel like going from an actor to like to a director is like, instead of doing that, instead of running what you're doing, the story, now you're running like multiple stores, overseeing stuff. So I think that's it's a necessary jump. And I feel like a lot more actors, from the John Krasinski mold and from, the Paul Danos, and, recently I know that Jesse Eisenberg has a movie coming out that Finn Wolfhard's starring. I think a lot more actors are going to start directing things.
Bradley Cooper's done it.
I know he called Jon Favreau did it. Like, that was a big one. Like, Bradley Cooper, like, he got nominated for an Oscar for doing it. Ben Affleck did it. Like, all these guys.
Clint Eastwood, obviously.
Clint Eastwood. I mean, he's like the god, like the grandfather of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, no, I can't count Hitchcock, even though he was in his movies sometimes. But that doesn't really count.
I mean, Mel Gibson. Obviously has an incredible directorial resume. Yep. There's just some, it's a testament to, like, I feel like sometimes people think actors are just these like faces, and like that's all they're good for, but they're in the status that they're in because they understand the art of filmmaking. So when they get that opportunity to step behind the camera and actually put a thing together, like, it shows like
Jordan Peele, yeah, that's.
And the cool thing is, what I like when actors step behind the camera and direct things, like Jordan Peele, for example, was obviously most known for like his comedy, and then he steps behind the camera and does something totally
funny?
Off genre. Like, it's really cool.
And then John Krasinski did the same thing. He was a comedic actor, and then he steps behind the camera, and it's like that old adage, like that some of like the most, Bill Hader's another one. Like, I know Bill Hader ran the show. I think he only directed 1 or 2 episodes of that show, but same thing. Like, even down to show running on these and executive producing the shows that they're in, like, they still have the elements of what, made them great, but there's like there's a realness to what they're doing, in their directorial work and their writing work. So.
Yeah, it's super cool. And great freshman outing for Michael B. Jordan. Yep. I think, this guy has already kind of been on the mountaintop as far as like actors.
Yeah, I mean, he reached the peak of what you can reach as an actor. Like 2018, Michael B. Jordan was like probably one of the most famous people on the planet. And
it wouldn't shock me if, like I said, this was more his path going forward. Like, I think he's found kind of a new thing, like a new niche. He's talked about the Dragon Ball in the room and like ideas that he would have to do something like that. And I was like thinking to myself, like, I would never want to see anyone try a live action Dragon Ball movie again, but.
Who knows?
I mean, he seems to have kind of an idea on how to make anime-esque sequences palpable in live action and make them dietable and make them make sense. So I think something like that, I don't know, it could make sense. Like, I think he might be able to pull that off, and I think it's something that, maybe not for his next film, but I think it's something that he definitely is circling. Yeah. Like, he talks about it all the time. So I don't know. I'm more seeing this makes me more interested in that. Like, I feel like he could potentially pull that off.
Yeah. And even without that, I just think he did a great job, period.
Yeah.
I think he did a good job, just period, as a director. I mean, he said he called Jon Favreau and Bradley Cooper, and he asked, like, how did you do it? Because what is different for them versus, like, let's say Paul Dano and Wildlife, like, what John Krasinski, what Jon Favreau, they were starred in the movie they were in. That's what makes it difficult. I mean, Jon Favreau probably has the most held back because he was a side character in Iron Man, but and then he had like a cameo in Elf, but like, he's the main character. Bradley Cooper was the main character. Like, these are the main characters of these movies that they're directing. Sly Stallone was the main character of the movie he was directing. Like, he asked them, like, how did you balance? Like, he said, and it's a feeling. Like, you just kind of, you have to know you have to understand what you're making too. Like, you got to understand, like, are you going in there to just sit behind the camera, or are you going in there, like, when you know that's where, like, that's where, like, an AD, an assistant director, comes in, like, heavily, like, where your cinematographer comes in heavily. Like, you need all these people and you need the personnel on set to be locked in, and, like, you're a sum of all your parts. So you can tell he had his team motivated, and that's the product that we get on, you know.
And it really helps that he was directing a project where he was so familiar with the character already. I think that really helped him a lot, because he could really focus on, okay, like, I have Adonis down, so, like, I can do both, like, I can balance both, and, like, my directing kind of chops have to come in to build up all these other characters and all these other moments. And like I said, I think he was able to take a thing that everyone was super familiar with and everyone knew the formula, and put his own spin on it. And I think that, more than anything, is the most impressive thing about it. Not only withstanding that it's a good movie and it's going to be successful, but just, I love when, like, the director's individuality comes through, especially on these kind of legacy projects. Like, I love when you see something different from a thing that's already established, and you know deep down that, like, that difference comes down to the director. You know what I mean? That's where that difference comes through, because this could have just been another Rocky-esque movie, and probably would have been fine. It probably would have been good, but the fact that he was able to, especially in the third act, like the crux of the movie, like when you really needed to land, and that was the part where he was like, I'm just gonna go nuts. Like, I think that's also really cool too. Yeah,
and it helps, you know, having people that believe in you. You can tell. And, you know, one thing that, to, you know, keep putting Jonathan Majors on this pedestal, one thing that, you know, for his career that he might run into is, I kind of talked about it yesterday. I'm waiting for him. I mean, he already has gotten the call from Spike Lee, so, you know, one of your pillar directors. What I'm thinking about for, you know, the personnel in your film, like, it's good that he got somebody like Jonathan Majors or something like that, because now you're getting these upper echelon actors to also go, you know, to be in these movies too. It helps. Like, I just think Jonathan Majors is going to get to that point, like, before he gets that call from, like, you know, Christopher Nolan or something, or like that big call. Like, I mean, for all intents and purposes, from what I'm hearing about Magazine Dreams, is like, he's going to be in the 5 for Best Actor at the end of 2023. So, if you have that right now, this man is like, he's there. Like, he's really there. And I mean, it was being propped up that we were saying it here. Everybody was saying it, like, he's going to be in 2 of the biggest movies right out of the gate in 2023. Within the first 3 months, like, we were saying that, and then we were being told that, and then it actually happened. I'm like, whoa, like, he actually is, like, up there. Like I said, like, it really feels like Pedro Pascal for TV and him for movies. Like, that's the 2 biggest actors on the planet right now. Yeah. So. Yeah, completely. Yeah, so it's like, my point is, it's great that he gets somebody like that to act apart from him. Somebody that, like, if you get Jonathan Majors too late, he might say no, because he's acting on such, like, a pedestal where it's like, I can't get him for anything like that. So I think he got him at the right time, and it's nice that he got a new friend now. For all, like, that's nice.
And someone now that, with Jonathan Majors, eventually becomes that top pedestal. Like, if Michael B. Jordan wants to keep making movies, now he has that. Well, that relationship.
They talked about it when Michael B. Jordan got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Like, Jonathan Majors was there, and he was talking about it. Like, they want to collaborate, and, like, the directing part is what gets me super excited. Like, I hope he throws Jonathan Majors in, like, a super tight action movie, which is, like, you know, maybe like a John Wick-esque, but, like, with Michael B. Jordan's touch on it, like, where it's, like, you know, maybe something that somebody writes instead of being adapted from anywhere. Like, give us something that's new and fresh, where Jonathan Majors can get his own role, because I think that's also what he might need, like, I think he hasn't gotten his defining role yet too. Like, I feel like you give me an actor, I'll give you their defining role. Don't. You're gonna say something crazy. That's where. No. I know you too well.
I don't know, man. Mel Gibson.
Braveheart.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Like Jack Nicholson. Like, he's the Joker. Like Heath Ledger. He's the Joker.
Marlon Brando. He's the. Never mind.
He's the Godfather. Like, you know, like. I don't think Jonathan's gotten, like, Denzel has so many.
Alonzo.
Like, right, well, true, yeah, like the one he actually won for. Tom Hanks, same, like,
Woody.
Woody. Yeah, well, yeah. Tom, like, I think Tom Hanks and Denzel have, like,
His character from Elvis.
But yeah, I don't think he's...
No, he doesn't. You're right.
He hasn't had... And that, like, that excites me so much, because what's it going to be? Because, I don't know if you heard that Spike Lee and him are making a movie again. So that's going to be really... I think he said he's going to be a Broadway actor, but, like, I think the tagline that he talked about was, like, would he be willing... Like, he wants this role so bad, is he willing to kill for it? So you mix that tagline with Spike Lee, and then possibly who's gearing up to be possibly the best actor on the planet, like... That's a potent mix. So
that is a potent mix.
I'm just really excited for everybody's careers out of this movie.
Yeah.
So that's Creed 3.
Yeah, it was great.
You gotta be punchy. What a line to get off.
Man, good movie.
Good movie.
Good movie. Great movie. Man, we're done.
Yeah,
we've done it.
Yep. What's today?
It's International Women's Day.
It is International Women's Day. So thank you for all the strong women that, have been in the industry, helping to help us be able to talk about the things we've been talking about. Thank you to all the women in our life that have been helping us from day zero to up until this day. There's so many that I can name. So thank you very much. So what I wanted to do was this is your chance to talk about, could be a character, could be a real person, in movies, TVs, comics, video games that is cool or awesome or inspires you or anything along those lines.
Oh man, you go first. I have to think.
Sure. I mean, I had two. One for me is Rachel Morrison, and it's funny that we talked about the Creed movies. I mean, she's the first woman to win Best Cinematography. I think from everything that I've heard, I listened to a lot of her interviews too, which is great. She's an incredible collaborator, and I think that's something that's very important when you're working on anything artistic is the collaboration piece and how you bounce all ideas off and what you take and what you gain. I think all of those things are very important. Her work speaks for herself. I mean, she shot Mudbound, she shot Creed 1, she shot Black Panther. Like, these are three, incredibly looking movies, but also in there too, like, there's a lot of, Black Panther might be the one that's, a little bit distant, but there's still bits in it where, like, some of the cinematography is very tight and it's very, it's very real, it's very raw, and I really appreciate that. I think she comes to a crux in Mudbound, and gladly she won the award and she got recognized for her work. The other one for me is I'm gonna shout out Charlotte Wells that directed After Sun, and it's not because I'm happy with her, it's because I'm very mad that she made me emotionally unstable for the last the last 3 minutes of that movie. I don't know what happened, but seriously, it's just, again, somebody that gets this this debut, and is pulling these performances out of these people. I think the best reason I wanted to shout her out is because how personal filmmaking can be, and how she made that her big debut that personal, and it's truthfully it's a story about her life, about her and her father on a trip to Turkey, and what she didn't know about her father up until that point. It's some incredible storytelling, and I'm glad that we're to this point. I mean, I can go on and on about just this year. I can go on about 10 years ago. I can go on and on about 100 years ago, but those are just two modern ones that I wanted to shout out.
Cool. I was going to shout out, going to my gaming well, I was going to shout out Amy Hennig, who I've talked about on this podcast before. Gave us, one of the foremost women gaming developers, not just notable for that, but notable for giving us just three of the most iconic games of all time in terms of Jak and Daxter, in terms of Legacy of Kain, in terms of, and then most notably Uncharted. Yep. I mean, she was the figurehead behind Uncharted. She's the one who, I mean, we talk about The Last of Us. Neil Druckmann sat under the Amy Hennig learning tree. He worked his way up through the Naughty Dog ladder to the point where he's the man now at Naughty Dog, and no small part to Amy Hennig, who has now moved on to her own game studio where she is developing the Black Panther, Captain America Marvel game that I think has both of us very excited and has our attention.
Leo from Django,
you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
Exactly. The curiosity was in the namesake, and then the attention was in that first trailer, and I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. So super excited to see what she has in store. She's one of the most sought after video game story writers going right now. She was attached to the longest time to a Star Wars 1313 project that unfortunately never got off the ground. But I mean, you get her for something with a major IP attached to it, and it's going to be special. And then just going down like the character front, I mean, for the longest time, at least in video games and in movies too, and TV shows, like it's been a long road to get kind of these female heroes that weren't dependent on their sexualities. And I think over the last probably 15 years or so, we've really hit a boom in that regard as far as these. I mean, Ellie is a perfect example.
Well, yeah, I was just gonna give a character because I didn't before, but I mean, Ellie, I mean, just other ones I can think of. I mean, Ripley in Alien and Aliens, like Sigourney Weaver really revolutionized one, but if I'm to pick a specific one for myself, it's probably Sarah Connor for me, because I was such a absolute, like, if I was a fan of like the Rocky movies, like I don't know why I was so obsessed with those Terminator movies, but I say a lot that I think Terminator 2 is one of the greatest action movies of all time, and I mean,
it is.
and what I think the best parts of those movies are like how traumatic the experience was, and like for Sarah, and like how kind of radicalized she was in there. Like, I love that monologue that she gives where she sees those kids playing in that park and she's just like, this means nothing to, like, these kids are going to be obliterated in a little bit. Like, this is like, look at this little sect of life that we're about to have before, the inevitability strikes in. Like, I think that performance is so strong in that movie. It really elevates it. So Sarah Connor, I think, is a really good one. Yeah.
And then just, thinking about Ellie and so again, it's great that The Last of Us has hit as much as it did, because that's a whole new umbrella of people that are exposed to this character that is just amazing. Like, she's one of the most well-written characters in gaming, and now she's become one of the most well-written characters in TV. And I think it's super cool that, just thinking about like just the PlayStation stable of characters, like you have Ellie, you have Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, you have the newer iterations of Lara Croft that's become a much more well-rounded character over the years. So like, it's cool that like, as far as a whole studio, not just a studio, but like a company is concerned, they're building so many characters and so many games around these female-led kind of characters. And I mean, even thinking about Ghost of Tsushima, thinking about Yuna, like, she's one of the most interesting characters in that entire game. Like, she's kind of the impetus for turning Jin from this honorable samurai into the ghost,
which is usually the other way around. That's why I think that's so interesting.
Yeah, so it's super cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other kind of, I mean, what was the game that just came out? Forspoken, that just got released, has a female lead. And, I'm glad that we're getting to the point where it's just sort of like normalized. Yeah. And I mean, even you talk, I mean, that's your realm. And I mean, you talk about film itself. Like, I mean, in the last, couple years, I mean, I just watched Tar 2 days ago. And I mean, usually you don't get character studies like that out of women. You usually get that out of men. And like having these like tougher discussion, like, character studies, it's awesome that Cate Blanchett was able to hold that, and I think it's very strong, and I think it's down to the diversity of the situation. And I'm talking about Michelle Yeoh, like seeing how 100%. How much you have to fight to get a role like that, like to get to the point in your life where you can get a role like that. It's just amazing, and she absolutely kills it in that movie too. And that movie has produced 3 of their main actors in that movie, or 4 of them, but 3 of the women in that cast have been nominated for best actor or best supporting actor. So it's really awesome to see kind of in the modern day what's happening. I mean, a couple of names in modern day in terms of act. I mean, Angela Bassett's been incredible, but another, maybe one of my favorite female actresses is probably Regina King. I absolutely adore Regina King. I think she's so absolutely powerful in her acting, and I mean, an absolutely powerful person, especially what she's been through in the last year. I just think it's one of those presence things. Like, when Regina King steps on a set, she's there, and I think there's something to say about that too. One of these days, we're going to talk about Watchmen.
I've been itching to talk about that show because I can comfortably in my own skin say that I think that might be the greatest superhero television show of all time. That show is incredible is an understatement.
I think it's kind of cool that that show is like a one and done because it's timeless.
It's timeless. It's the true sequel to the Watchmen book. Like, that's the actual sequel. It's not the movie. Like, that's the actual sequel to the book.
It's timeless, and that means, you know...
Jeremy Irons.
Jeremy Irons. We can...
What a casting choice to put Jeremy Irons as Ozymandias.
And it just means that we can talk about it at any time.
Yeah.
Like, we can just up and decide, like, hey, let's talk about Watchmen.
Yep.
So that's...
It's like to the point, I hope they never touch it. Like, I hope that thing lays exactly where it is.
Yeah, I totally agree. Man, so yeah, shout out to all the women, past, present, future, fictional, non-fictional. It's great. It's great that we're inching closer and closer to just being more comfortable with having women leading things, and we should, because they know what they're doing. Way more than we do. But that's going to do it for us this week. You can follow us on Twitter at ProjectINF_pod. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow us on Instagram.
At the Project Infinite Pod.
Thank you. New episodes every Wednesday, or in this case, Thursday this week. Next week is going to be our Last of Us postmortem for season 1.
I truthfully don't know if I'm ready for that.
We're going to talk about the finale, and then, you know, you've gotten our thoughts this whole time on the entire show, but we'll really be able to kind of dive into, like, we'll be able to fully give you our favorite episodes, which is going to be incredibly difficult.
This might be the toughest favorite NPC.
Oh, man, dude. Yeah. Very difficult. Very difficult for lots of things. Favorite, I mean, how do you isolate moments? How do you isolate... How do you isolate characters? How do you isolate, you know, shots, like sequences, like musical moments? Like, the show is truly special. Like, it really is. And there's so much we can say about it. Like, performances, like, how do you isolate your favorite performance between everything that we've got? Like, this genuinely might be the most difficult iteration of this that we've done, because the consistency from the pilot to now has just been astounding. Yeah. I mean, it never relented. Especially, like, even at moments where, like, I was like, oh, is this gonna, like, translate? Is this gonna work? And
yes,
yeah, every single time. Like, there's never been a dull moment, never a moment where something didn't land or didn't work. I mean, the things that I was worried about in terms of, like, how are they gonna get me to care about Henry and Sam in this course of 55 minutes? And then they did.
They did, and then some.
So, you know,
why'd they have to make him deaf? That made it so much tougher. And they made him 8. When I see Craig Mazin, it's on sight.
And then, yeah, I mean, that's going to be part of it too. From the incredible kind of pushback that Craig Mazin was getting before this even got off the ground, and then what he was able to do with it, I think, is just incredible. So, yeah, come back next week when we talk about The Last of Us, because it's time. We're here. We made it to the end of the season.
We're almost ceasing of making it to the end of the seasons. We're almost to the end of the award season. Almost. I guess the week after that would be... I don't know. The week after that, we might have to do a combo Oscars and Shazam review.
Shazam.
Oh, don't say that. You're going to turn into... I don't know who you'll turn into.
Zachary Levi?
Maybe you'll turn into Robert Redford. I don't know why that's absolutely hilarious, but...
Oh, like, man.
You just turn into somebody with the same name, but they're just an actor. Like, I would turn into Courtney B. Vance.
I'd like to be Robert Redford. That'd be awesome. Robert Redford was in a Captain America movie.
He was in a Captain America movie.
And he was the villain.
He was the villain. He was freaking cool. Because he was just like a guy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
He was just like a big corporate boss, essentially.
That was great.
Yeah. He's just Bob Iger, really.
One of Robert Redford's final performances.
That was one of his final performances. He's not dead.
He's not dead, but...
Yeah, he stopped acting.
Yeah, but man...
Is Daniel Day-Lewis going to act again?
What if he's the living tribunal?
Stop it. Cut it out. No, he'd be bigger than that.
Ooh. What if he's Galactus?
Galactus is being reserved for Liam Neeson.
All right, man. From the future Robert Redford, and from...
Careful, man.
From the the Duke Jr. of the podcast.
Duke, that's a balanced breakfast. It's the greatest line, actually. Oh, we didn't do any of the... What I really wanted to do is I wanted to do the categories, but for the whole Rocky franchise.
We can do that another week.
Yeah, we don't have time anymore.
There's so many things.
Yeah.
To pick from that Rocky franchise.
I think Don King's probably my favorite NPC, though.
Ah, man, I'd have to watch.
Is it the robot? Is the robot my favorite NPC from Rocky?
The robot's good. You can pick any slew of, like, get him, Rock. One of those guys. Those guys are great.
The guys calling the fight. No, it's definitely the Russians. And the Russians that were, like, escorting him in Rocky 4 are probably my favorite NPCs.
Oh, man. Yeah, the Duke Jr. of the podcast.
It's a balanced breakfast.
I like Wood Harris.
Yeah. Wood Harris was great, yeah. That's really your daddy's son. Like, see? Why are we making movies about Adonis Creed when we could have been making movies about Wood Harris this whole time as Duke Jr.?
Yeah.
Better. I just want Duke Jr. to, like, have a lineage of just famous boxing trainers. Oh, and his daughter is... I think the next movie might be about his daughter.
That would be good.
I think the next movie is going to be, like, his daughter's going to be... Like, what if his daughter's going for, like, the Golden Gloves?
Being trained by...
Nope. Being trained by him.
And Dame?
What if she goes and seeks out Dame because she wants to learn more about her father? Dame trains her.
And she wants to learn some of that. Mm-hmm. Some of those elbows.
Yeah. Creed 4.
Creed 4.
Tessa Thompson's in this again. Love Tessa Thompson. She's probably the best she'd been in these movies, and it's probably this and one are where she was at the best. But
yeah, you know, it's a Rocky movie at the end of the day. She definitely gets more nuance than Adrian ever got. So
Adrian was there to yell Rocky,
and
have their kid.
You can win.
You can win.
Or you can't win, like she says to him in Rocky 4. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'll show you. I'm going to Russia.
I'm going to Russia to train. And then she was also in Russia. Who's looking after their kid?
Well, now you start to understand what he was going through in the sixth one.
Yeah, they made it. They made up.
They did.
Didn't his son... Was he going to fight again?
I don't know.
Or he wanted him to fight?
Yeah, he wanted him to fight, but he wanted to be business.
Right.
This is anime. It's just Dragon Ball Z. Yeah. Goku wanted Gohan to fight the whole time, and Gohan just wanted to go to school.
Yeah.
And then Goku made him fight Cell.
What a leap. God. Yeah, Creed 4, if you're listening to Michael B. Jordan, have Dame be the one that she goes to seek out.
Yeah.
And, you know, she could be like, I don't know, how old is she now? Like 8? She'd be like 14 or something, 15, have a little time jump, and yeah. And then he's going to have to fight again. He's going to have to fight his daughter in the 5th one. That would be insane.
That would be insane.
That would be a good way, because the 5th movies are supposed to be the worst ones. Or the best ones. So I hope she's ready to fight Michael B. Jordan, because...
Oh, man.
You need good old-fashioned horsepower. Why did he crack his neck after that? That was so unnecessary.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week for the Last of Us. Prepare to be traumatized.
It's the do they know? Do they know?
Oh, man. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Peace.